George, do you know where the word cocktail comes from?
I don't know, but I know there are a couple of different theories. Some believe that cocktails literally come from guys selling rundown horses, and to revive them, they put spicy ginger in the horse's ass. This would make its tail perk up and seem to give it spirit. I think these horses were also of mixed breed, and people took that and started naming mixed drinks cocktails.
Ginger in the ass? Have you ever used that for your hemorrhoids?
I can't say the thought had ever occurred to me to try it.
Probably not a good idea. What are some other theories?
Another theory is that a New Orleans apothecary sold bitters mixed with brandy in egg cups. New Orleans was founded by French colonists. In French, an egg cup is pronounced cocktail, and English speakers would pronounce it as cocktails.
You know what my theory is?
Is it better than a ginger-assed horse?
Actually, no. I don't think I can top that.
That's weird. I always thought of you as a top.
Yeah, man-on-man action is pretty much where my theory on the origin of the cocktail was going to go. Welcome to Does This Still Work? The podcast looks at old wigs and asks, does this still work? I'm Joe Dixon.
And I'm George Romacka. And today we're discussing Cocktail from 1988 and some historical context. First, podcasty stuff. You can reach us at dtswpod@gmail.com, on Facebook, Letterboxd, and on our YouTube channel. Joe is on Blue Sky at joedixon.bsky.social. Please tell your friends about us, even the ones who think of themselves as philosophers, and leave 5-star ratings everywhere. And we all know at least one guy like that, right?
Who considers himself a philosopher?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm doing a show with him.
You can pick what we watch and get extra per episode content by funding us on Patreon for as little as $1 a month at patreon.com/dtswpod. Now, Joe, take us back to 1988.
I have a personal story from 1988.
Do you?
Yeah, I do. I did not see this movie when it came out, but I know it was a huge hit, as was the song on the soundtrack, The Beach Boys' Kokomo. Now, knowing that and remembering that when confronted about it are not the same thing. I was at Tower Records, rest in peace, in the West Village buying, I don't know what, probably a movie, and this guy comes up to me asking about where he can get a copy of Kokomo. And I go, I don't know, and point someplace. Dude comes up to me again and tells me, hey, it's not there. And it's only then I realize, oh, he thinks I work here. So I tell him I don't. But that happens to me a lot. I have been mistaken for bouncers, Gap workers, record store workers, and just this week, I was in Walgreens and this woman comes up to me asking about her prescription. Do you get this, George? Are you ever shopping at a store and random people think you work there?
No, I don't have that problem, Joe. That's a very interesting problem to have. I think you have like resting wage slave face.
Well, I didn't want to bring race into it, but it is curious that all these people were white. So maybe that's something to do with it. Just, oh, here's a black guy. He probably
works here. Yeah. He can't possibly be spending money.
And moving on. According to the website Daily Meal, the most popular cocktail of 1988 was the Long Island iced tea. Easily the nastiest fucking drink I've ever tasted. This thing has vodka, rum, tequila, and triple sec in it. And it is awful. Your thoughts, George?
I agree. It's awful. It tastes like a New Jersey Turnpike.
That's really bad.
A New Jersey Turnpike is when the bartender hates you and he drains the bar mat into a shot glass.
Is that a real thing?
I don't know,
Joe. Just make it up.
I didn't make it up.
Okay.
I'll say that much.
I'm unfamiliar. But yeah, it's a nasty drink. I'm surprised it was ever number one at any time. You know, a soda came out in 1988, and I don't remember it at all. George, read this headline from Newsday.
7-Up to offer spice-flavored drink. I'm assuming it was not laced with the stuff in Dune.
I would imagine not. I will read. 7-Up Company said yesterday it will introduce 7-Up Gold, a spice-flavored, amber-colored soft drink that the company describes as the wild side of 7-Up. 7-Up Gold and Diet 7-Up Gold, sweetened with aspartame, will be aimed largely at male consumers aged 18 to 34. So I was that demographic. I do not remember this.
They aimed badly.
Back to the article. The 1988 advertising budget for 7-Up Gold will exceed $10 million, in addition to the company's previously announced advertising budget of more than $80 million, end quote.
That's a lot of money to spend to not have Joe remember your product.
Indeed, 7-Up Gold lasted a whole year. I do remember the fallout from New Coke, but don't recall any controversy about this drink. It was just there one day and gone the next. I guess as we all are, really.
Mm-hmm.
And finally, I can't get too detailed on this one because we're going to cover the movie about this very event, but 1988 was also the year Jamaica, for the first time, competed in the Winter Olympics. The sport they competed in? Bobsledding. Read this headline from Newsday, George.
Hey, Mon. Tropical Ice Age, Jamaica fields bobsled team. No, I will not do it in an attempted Jamaican accent, because that would be me trying black voice and not going there.
Alrighty. Well, there are white people with Jamaican accents. It's not like it's impossible.
I've never seen them in a movie called Cool Runnings.
They do exist. Anyway, I will quote, "Get this, Jamaica has entered its first Olympic team ever in the bobsled at Calgary. Yeah, I've heard it all," said George Fitch, who hatched this idea while sitting in a bar in Kingston. "I'm crazy. I've got sunstroke." He's got a team, too, assembled in the past 6 months, starting from scratch with no money, no athletes, no sleds, and no course on a tiny tropical island where there is no snow, and the only ice around floats and tumblers of rum and coke. From the seemingly preposterous scheme came logic. Jamaica has developed many world-class sprinters, and speed and explosiveness are what is needed for the start of a bobsled push. Fitch, a former attaché to the U.S. Embassy in Kingston, has business connections, and that led to sponsorships giving the sleds, well, a push. End quote. But that is another movie for another time, so we won't get any further into that. Okay, George, tell us about Cocktail.
Okay, this is directed by Roger Donaldson,
whose work I've seen in No Way Out.
And I've seen his work in Dante's Peak. This was written by Haywood Gould, and we know him from the show, from The Boys in Brazil.
Boy, is that a different movie.
Very different movie.
This guy's got range. Holy hell.
A much better movie.
Well, don't give away the conclusion already.
Blurbs. IMDb says, a talented New York City bartender takes a job at a bar in Jamaica and falls in love.
What? I mean, he does, but...
He does those things.
But he goes back to New York. He doesn't stay in Jamaica. It makes it sound like he left New York, went to Jamaica, and that's where the story starts.
Yeah. Well, Amazon says a young, ambitious New York bartender becomes the toast of Manhattan's Upper East Side. But when he moves to Jamaica and finds true love, he gains a new perspective on his life. Way rosier than this movie is.
It's way rosier this movie is. And also, why does IMDb and Amazon think this movie is set in Jamaica? He goes to Jamaica and then he comes back to New York. The movie is mostly set in New York.
Yeah, he spends like 18 minutes in Jamaica.
And what, a movie that's about 2 hours?
Yeah. So Brian Flanagan, our protagonist, has just gotten out of the army. Him and about 5 other veterans are crammed into a car, and they're speeding down the road with a siren blaring and a red teardrop police light in their window. They illegally impersonate police in order to pull over a Greyhound bus so that Brian can just get on it and head towards New York.
And say goodbye to all those veteran friends of his, because he's never going to contact any of them again.
Nope, sure won't.
They're such good friends. They help him get on the bus. They illegally impersonate cops, and then he never talks to them ever again.
Right. Brian Flanagan is played by Tom Cruise.
And good old Tom we've seen for the show in Top Gun and Jerry Maguire. I myself have seen him in Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning, Mission Impossible Fallout, Mission Impossible Ghost Protocol, and also, not just Mission Impossible, I've also seen him in Tropic Thunder, A Few Good Men, and The Color of Money.
And I've seen him in The Outsiders, Minority Report, The Last Samurai, and War of the Worlds. And we've both seen him in Top Gun Maverick, Interview with the Vampire, and the first Mission Impossible.
And it's interesting, he is another one of those actors who we've seen his work, but different films.
Yeah.
He's been in so many movies, it's possible that you've only seen these, and the other person's only seen those, and never the twain will mix.
Yep. We get a montage of various legs of that bus trip from somewhere west of New York to New York, including one scene that made me think I'd missed something because it seemed like he was now married with a child and talking to that child for some fucking reason.
I was going to mention that scene, like, who? I was going to say on a bus, but I was saying any mode of transportation. I don't know this person. I'm not having you play with my kid, okay?
Right. To be fair, I've had conversations with other people's kids on trains just for fun because the kid seemed interested and like constantly looked back at the parent like, this is cool, right? We're cool. You're not going to kill me, right? Okay. And then keep talking. But I don't know. He seemed really like it seemed like it was his kid.
Yes, and it wasn't just a conversation. He's holding the child.
Yeah.
He's got the kid in his lap, holding him up, and letting the kid look out the window. I'm like, what?
And we're going to take that town together, Mikey, you and me.
By the way, ladies and gentlemen, I should have mentioned this earlier. In order to get into the festivities of a cocktail movie, I am having a cocktail. So I may be a little slurred and mixed up as I go along. George, ask me what I'm having.
What are you having, Joe?
I'm having a margarita.
You're having a margarita.
Mm-hmm. And it's tasty.
Brian heads to his Uncle Pat's tavern. Pat also owns the apartment that Brian grew up in with his mother, and he's been keeping it for Brian's eventual return. Brian makes it very clear that he wants to get very rich very quickly. Pat is dubious of this, certain that Brian is going to wake up one day with a wife and kids working some dead-end job to make ends meet.
That whole conversation just spelled exposition to me. That whole conversation did not feel real in the least. It felt like I got to put this all in. I can just hear the screenwriter tapping away.
Flat beer from rusty pipes. How I missed the taste. Really? Uncle Pat is played by Ron Dean, a guy with two first names.
Mm-hmm. For the show, we've seen him in The Fugitive. We've both seen him in The Dark Knight and Breakfast Club. And I've seen him in the aforementioned The Color of Money.
Next is a montage of Brian interviewing for and getting turned down for a number of jobs where one would be wearing a suit. With no formal education and only his veteran status for experience, the business world does not see him as a worthwhile investment.
Man, I was screaming bullshit as I was seeing that. This guy is a veteran. Recruiters for jobs would have come to him. He's a veteran. The idea that a veteran can't find work is ludicrous. Yes, even in 1988. You don't just get out of the army and there's no setup at all.
Yeah.
There's something out there like, oh, we're looking for people who've been in the military. Why do they want people in the military? Because they know you follow orders. Ostensibly, you follow orders. You can be trusted to show up, blah, 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 blah. My brother never spent a day in school. Well, even you also didn't graduate.
I was going to say, Joe, I'm right fucking here. Where are you going?
But also my brother, both of you guys didn't graduate college. You got good jobs once you got out of the military.
Mm-hmm. I got out of the Navy and then went to a hotel where there was a hiring conference put together by a headhunting organization that specifically was contracted by companies to get ex-military people.
But the Navy notified you of it, right? I mean, you just didn't find out on your own.
No, I learned about it from the recruiters, headhunters.
Right. So anyway, they contact you. Exactly. Yeah. That's what would have happened to him. The idea he would just go in these places and like, number one, if he didn't have any experience, he would never have gotten an interview in the first place.
Nope.
That's another thing. Oh, you have no experience. So why are you talking to me? Do you have nothing better to do? Why would you have schedule an appointment with someone who you're going to completely reject like that? Tell them, oh, you have no experience. You can't do anything. Mm-hmm. Why are you talking to me?
Dejected, Brian stops at a TGI Fridays that has a help wanted sign in the window.
Are those still around? I don't even know.
TGI Fridays? Yes, yeah. They still exist.
Okay.
Inside, he finds Doug Coughlin, a bartender and philosopher who quotes his own philosophy, coined as logical negativist, all the way up until the point in the movie where he says himself is full of shit. Doug Coughlin is played by Brian Brown, or the poor man's Ryan Stiles.
Okay.
Doug takes Brian under his wing and starts teaching him all about bartending. Brian's first shift is a nightmare, which is to be expected. Brian starts attending business school during the day while honing his bartending craft at night. Before long, despite Brian burning the candle at both ends, he and Doug are a damn near vaudeville spectacle of a bartending team. Their bar flair and remembering of popular song lyrics causes panties to drop and tips to rain.
This film was very popular obviously it's popular at the time, but a lot of people who have fond memories of this film have, and I'm just basing this on what I've read, what little research I've done, they have fond memories of it because I used to see it on HBO when they were kids, before they were old enough to drink, so I saw it when they were in high school and junior high school. Imagine thinking this is how bartending works. When you're like your fucking juggler throwing bottles in the air. I would hate that.
I mean, not for nothing, there are bartenders who do that, and Heath Enright of Puzzle in a Thunderstorm, friend of the show, used to do the TGI Fridays bar flair competitions.
That's fine, and bar flair is a real thing, but I think for the majority of people going out for a drink, they don't want to see this shit. I know I wouldn't. That would annoy the hell out of me. And some of the bars in this movie, I'm sure we'll get into, are like, what?
Yeah.
I mean, there's one of them, I don't know if you've mentioned this one, where they're reading poetry in a packed bar.
We'll get there. We'll get there.
Like, what bar is this?
Their growing friendship even includes visiting each other's homes, and at Brian's, they discuss and agree to work towards opening their own chain of New York-style bars called Cocktails and Dreams. Their antics are so spectacular that they get recruited to be the star bartenders at a much more high-class and expensive establishment, one of the many themed bars in New York City, Cell Block.
Woo! All right.
Here, the yuppies are the main clientele. They even take the time to spout pro-capitalist poetry. Brian himself becomes known as something of a poet, though his prose is dripping with alcohol.
That cell block is packed. I want people who have seen this film to go back and look at it. That place is packed. The only place that isn't packed in this film is Brian's uncle's place. Every place is packed. They've only got 2 bartenders on. What is that? Mm-hmm. Or 1 waitress, as we'll see in the restaurant scene. What is this?
Yep.
Was New York City just understaffing people back in the 80s?
Apparently.
And also, I can't imagine going to a bar, lights all over I mean, this bar is incredible. Packed, lights all over the place, and some motherfuckers getting up reading poetry? What? This isn't Love Jones. There's no way that's happening.
Brian's stylistic bartending catches the attention of Coral, a pretty lady with a camera.
Coral's played by Gina Gershon, who we know from the show in Pretty in Pink and Showgirls. We both seen in Face Off, and I've seen her in The Player and City of Hope.
She ends up taking him back to her place, a brownstone that she owns the entirety of, and they make the whoopee all night long. When he leaves in the morning, she calls herself his girlfriend.
It's a hell of a jump.
Yep.
I mean, it's a one-night stand, for God's sake.
Well,
we barely know each other, but okay.
It's the first night, yes.
Well, I guess it doesn't become a one-night stand, but if I was picked up by this woman, I would assume it was a one-night stand. I would think, oh, you're my girlfriend now? Oh, okay. Mm-hmm. The women cling very fast in this film. We'll see what the next lady he's with.
Yep.
In fact, all the ladies cling to this motherfucker too much. Sorry, I've been drinking, so maybe I'm a little...
salty. The next day, Brian, Coral, and Doug are hanging out at Brian's place. Brian pitches an idea. To earn the $75,000 that they'll need to start their bar chain, they should go to Jamaica and bartend down there. It's dirt cheap to live there are no taxes, and they could easily save that money up in some unspecified short amount of time. Doug is doubtful.
Quick question. Mm-hmm. Let's say I'm a businessman in Jamaica. Who am I hiring? A local or some white dude coming in from New York to work at my bar? Because it seems weird.
I don't know on that one, because he had bartending experience.
And there's none in Jamaica? Also, since I brought it up, this is yet another film set in the 80s where it swears New York City is the whitest town in America. Mm-hmm. Like, there's no blacks, no Hispanics, no Asians, no nothing.
Nothing.
Just white, until he goes to Jamaica. And even then, it's white.
Mostly, yeah.
Yeah.
Ambulance driver's black.
Yes. He's the one representation of the film. And he's got, 3 lines, maybe?
Okay, yeah, but we're not there yet.
Yes, we're not there yet.
Sometime later, Doug and Brian are shooting some hoops. Brian tells all about the kissing he and Coral did. Brian bets $50 that by the end of the week, Coral will be betting some other guy. This is the first of 2 $50 bets that Doug proposes that Brian accepts that Brian will regret taking.
Why do you suppose Doug is being a dick there about this?
Because Doug is a dick.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good answer.
That night at Cell Block, Doug whispers some words to Coral, and then they make out in front of Brian. Not only is Brian out $50, he's also out a girlfriend. He decides to also be out of a best friend, so he gets into an almost murder fight with Doug. Here we get Chekhov's concept of the broken alcohol bottle. Brian quits and moves to Jamaica.
Now, this is a very fancy place. You'd think the bouncers would have just rushed over there, at least when these bartenders suddenly get into a fight. Again, they're the only 2 bartenders there. Also interesting in this packed joint.
Yeah, well, the bouncers would have had to make it all the way through the packedness of that packed joint.
That is true. That is correct. Okay, so she starts making out with him. So why was all this? Why did she didn't want to introduce the idea this is she was the girlfriend. Why do that if you really weren't? She could have just said, okay, this is a casual thing, right? I'm going to be banging other guys. And he would have been, okay. I mean, she specifically starts the idea that this is a relationship. Not him.
Joe, I am not going to try and make this movie make sense.
You know what? I was going to bring this up later, but what the hell? I'll bring it up now. This film suffers from the Pretty Woman syndrome. Pretty Woman initially started out as this gritty story about a prostitute with a drug problem, and then they turned it into Julia Roberts gets hired, and it turns into this beautiful story about Cinderella. Mm-hmm. This movie, or rather the initial source for this movie, was a gritty story about this guy working in a bartending business, and then they turned it into this.
Yep. 2 years later, Brian is bartending at some Jamaican hotel. A wild damsel appears to recruit Brian's help with her friend, who happens to be in distress. He rushes to the inebriated friend, assures the damsel that her friend will be fine, and has them call an ambulance. That damsel is Jordan Mooney.
And Jordan Mooney is played by Elizabeth Shue, who we've both seen in The Karate Kid, I've seen in Leaving Las Vegas, Hamlet 2, Deconstructing Harry, Soap Dish, and we've both seen in Back to the Future Part 2.
And I've seen her in Back to the Future Part 3, Hollow Man, Cobra Kai, and The Boys, the former two being TV shows.
Yay, quick question. All right, I'm working as a bartender. Why am I expected to go rush over to the beach and find this drunk girl? Isn't it someone else's job?
Yes. I mean, they should have just called an ambulance.
That would have helped, yeah. Because what does he do? He's not going to do anything.
He checks her over and she'll be okay with all of his medical experience. I mean, okay, we don't know what he did in the Army.
That's true.
So we can make this make sense and say he was a medic in the Army.
But she wouldn't know that.
She would know that, but he would, and that's why he would hop over the bar and go try to help.
I guess, but she goes to him for help.
Well, I mean, she goes to him because he works there and he's white. I'm going to tack that part in just because it's better that way.
Okay, I can't argue with that logic.
Yep. The next day, Jordan returns to the bar to thank him. Who should show up but Doug himself? In the intervening 2 years, Doug has managed to land himself a wife. Carrie Coughlin is a very, very wealthy woman.
Carrie Coughlin is played by Kelly Lynch, who I've seen in Drugstore Cowboy.
The two couples go dancing before the movie follows Brian and Jordan through a getting to know each other and falling in love montage that includes unprotected sex under a waterfall.
Yeah, there's no AIDS virus in 1988, so I don't have to worry. And there's another woman who we'll see suddenly attaches way too quick.
Yep. Sometime later, when their ladies aren't around, Doug approaches the bartending Brian and bets Brian $50 that he can't pick up a different very wealthy lady sitting at the end of the bar. That lady, Bonnie, tries to resist his charms, but is scripted to be unable.
True. It's definitely scripted, because there's no way. Number one, this woman's attractive. She'll be getting hit on by a lot of guys. The one bartender would be the only one trying to get her in the pants. And number two, she'd likely be there with her boyfriend or husband.
They end up stumbling away from the bar together at the end of the night on their way to get it on. Jordan observes this and spends the night grieving her hopes for her relationship with Brian.
A man she has barely known and she's met on vacation. He's a vacation fuckboy, nothing more.
Yep.
Why would this woman think it's more than that?
Because she was scripted to.
Bonnie is played by Lisa Banks, who I've seen in Gone Girl and The Hotel New Hampshire.
In the morning, Brian starts thinking he may have just made a huge mistake. He finds Jordan's friends who confirm that he did in fact make such a mistake because Jordan caught the next flight back to New York.
Oh, he broke her heart of a woman he barely knows. And by the way, they explain this later in the film, but as you know, I text you,
Yep.
How could this woman who is a waitress, she says she's a waitress, can afford this vacation? They explain it later in the picture. We'll get to it, I guess. But he should have been asking that question. He should have I'm working here, so I know I'm here, but she's a waitress. How can she afford this vacation? Afford the horses? Afford pretty much a private beach, because they have that beach all to themselves. The waterfall they have all to themselves. No crowds. He really doesn't. You think it would occur to him, that's weird.
All good questions, Joe. So he goes all in on his relationship with Bonnie, who adores her little pet bartender. He hopes to score some kind of salaried suit-wearing job out of this relationship. Their relationship lasts for what I'm going to assume is weeks until Bonnie takes him to an art gallery opening. He gets into a fist fight with the sculptor and has a messy public breakup with Bonnie on the street.
Yeah, that smacked of, we need a conflict right now. That whole thing with him fighting with that guy, that sculptor, like, what? Where did that even come from? Made no sense.
Now, when he got back to New York, he happened upon the restaurant where Jordan is a waitress. He goes there to try and win her back. For his efforts, he is rewarded with 2 plates of food dumped on him. And I laughed.
Yes, it's good to laugh, but that would have immediately gotten her fired. Well, but then again, she's the only waitress there, so maybe not.
Exactly.
There's another scene where people are begging, waitress. Definitely, she's the only waitress in that shift at that moment. In another packed place. Then she comes out, pours the food on his head. Some other dude comes out after her. I assume the cook. I don't know who that is.
And he just laughs.
He just laughs because apparently we just wasted our employer's food, or maybe that was his lunch and he didn't care. Mm-hmm. Imagine cooking this meal and, I'm going to use this meal you just cooked to pour over someone's head. Someone ordered this, but I'm going to waste that food right now.
He showers and comes back to catch her as she comes off shift. Stalker. Mm-hmm. She takes him back to her place to let him plead his case, which he does badly. Unmoved, she kicks him out of her apartment, but not before she tells him that she's pregnant.
Why did she tell him that? I don't know. Seemed unnecessary, and he even says it.
Yeah.
Kid, you didn't have to tell me this. But apparently it's 1988, and I guess Roe v. Wade is overturned back then as well. Because what can this do? Like, I'm not telling you shit, and then go get an abortion. The word abortion crosses no one's lips.
Right.
No one seems to think that thing exists. No one mentions it. No one brings it up. Nothing. Oh, you're pregnant? Oh, we should get married. Really? That's what should happen?
He goes to his Uncle Pat for advice. His uncle's advice is to leave well enough alone. She doesn't want him in her life, and she's not holding his feet to the fire about the kid, so we should take that as a win. When Brian is like, yeah, but what if I care about her? Pat's like, well, then you have a problem. And I just watched another movie for the podcast where that same theme fucking happens, where a guy tells like another guy, like, yeah, but I like her. And the guy's like, then you have a problem.
Wasn't an officer and a gentleman?
No, that was in Buffalo Soldiers.
Someone gets pregnant in Buffalo Soldiers?
No, but that whole, but I'm in love with her, then you have a problem.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Sorry. Yes. But it also exists in
an officer and a gentleman. Yeah.
But at least there they mention abortion. Yeah. Here, like, apparently doesn't exist. But also, again, this is a woman you met on vacation. Well, he was working, but she was on vacation. Why do they think that means this is a relationship?
Good question, Joe.
If I'm fucking somebody on vacation, I'm assuming I'm never seeing you again. This is just a vacation thing. This is going to turn into anything more.
He returns to Jordan's apartment only to find that she's not there. A neighbor, stupidly, informs him that she went to her parents' place on Park Avenue. This answers a question that Joe had texted me about the movie, about how a waitress from New York City could be vacationing in the same place as a millionaire heiress married to a bartender. The answer is that she comes from money.
Indeed. Yeah, that movie pulled the rug from under me on that one. Like, aha, we do have an answer for that. What we don't have an answer for is why this woman would have her friend tell this man where she was. She clearly doesn't want to talk to him. Yeah. She thinks she would have told a friend, don't tell people my address. Or my parents' address. And this dumb girl's like, oh yeah, she's there.
Yep.
Go there. She's not here. She's there. What friend is this?
So he goes to Jordan's parents' place, but she's not there either. Her father is, and he is no fan of Brian's. After making this clear, he hands Brian a check for $10,000 to try and buy Brian out of his daughter's life completely. Mr. Mooney is played by Lawrence Luckinbill, and I've seen him in Star Trek V, The Final Frontier. Jordan returns, and Brian questions why she never told him that she came from money. She says because she wanted him to want her for her and not her money, a theme that we've seen in at least one other movie.
It also doesn't make any freaking sense because, again, this is a bartender you picked up on vacation!
Yep. On his way out, Brian tears up the check, telling Jordan that she'll never know how he really feels about her. Back in Jamaica, Doug had offered Brian a job at the poshiest of posh bars that Doug now owns. Now, Brian goes to him for that job. We see that Doug's relationship with Carrie is not completely monogamous, and it doesn't look like Doug is super happy about that. So, Doug asks Brian to join him someplace more private so he doesn't have to see it.
By the way, if there is any character in this movie who would agree with your idea on monogamy, it would be this character. He would not be bothered by his wife with other men. If anything, he would also have women on the side. This guy would be so into the idea of an open relationship. It's preposterous that he's bothered by his wife doing anything.
Yep. That private place is a boat, again owned by Doug. They crack open a very expensive bottle of some alcohol and have a heart-to-heart. Basically, Doug is broke and has pissed away all of the money that Carrie has given him. When Carrie comes to ask her husband to take her home, Doug either passes out or feigns passing out, so Brian ends up driving her home.
Because she can't drive herself? I mean, I get the impression she probably wanted him to take her home, but nonetheless, this woman's rich. She can't get someone to drive, some other wealthy fuck, or just get a car service to drive her home? Or a cab?
She asks him up to her apartment and tries to seduce him. Brian isn't about to be screwing around with his on and off again best friend's wife, so he leaves to go back to Doug.
Do you remember the line she says to him? He says to her, where she says, "What do you want me to do? I'm in this marriage."
Am I supposed to just be with one man for the rest of my life? And he's like, yeah, it's called marriage.
Did that blow your mind?
I know that a lot of people think that way. I say as an engaged guy in an open relationship. What Brian finds is the funniest fucking scene in the movie. He finds that Doug has shattered that bottle of expensive liquor and used it to slit his own throat. I guess this is why IMDb called it a thriller, because, blood. This is obviously upsetting to Brian, who calls the authorities for help.
This, again, I go back to my point about how this initially started out as a more gritty movie, or rather a more gritty story, and then they Hollywood glamorized it up. This is several different films in one. There's the whole I'm an ex-army guy, then there's the whole I can't find a job movie, and then there's the whole I'm in love with this girl movie, and then there's the guy with the pricey wife movie who commits suicide. I mean, it's so many different films in this picture.
We get a short Brian brooding montage before the funeral. When he returns home, he finds in his mail a letter from Doug.
My dearest Brian, a guy like me looks in the mirror. He either grins or he starts to fade away. And I haven't seen anything to grin about in a long time. This may not be the most graceful exit, but I know when the bottle's empty. But the only thing I'm really gonna miss is the conversations we had going. At least I get the last word, even if I had to mail it in. Coughlin's Law. Bury the dead, they stink up the joint. As for the rest of Coughlin's laws, ignore them. The guy was always full of shit. But I guess you knew that already.
Do you think he wrote the
I paused on it. He didn't write the ha ha ha, so I guess Brian imagined it.
Does he strike you as someone who would kill himself? He seemed to have accomplished everything he wanted. He wanted to marry rich. He had all this money. This woman wasn't leaving him. She just wanted to screw other guys. Something I again contend he wouldn't care about.
Yeah. Now full of piss and vinegar and knowing only one other named non-related person in this movie he could have in his life, he heads to Jordan's parents' place. He tricks his way past the concierge, who has been under orders not to let him specifically enter.
What does he do before he gets to the concierge? He walks right past the doorman. What the hell was that guy there for?
Yeah.
I know enough about fancy. I literally have visited someone who had a doorman. You go in that building, you got to meet that guy first before you get to the concierge.
Yep.
And he just walks right past them. The doorman just lets him go in. Okay, I'm black. Granted, maybe that's why we would stop, but still, I think he wouldn't have just been able to make it to the concierge. He would have been asked, "Yes, can I help you?" Especially since there's instructions for him not to enter the building.
So he bursts into the apartment and makes an impassioned plea to Jordan, who for some fucking reason buys it. They leave together, and her father says they're on their own.
Which seems rather an extreme reaction.
Yeah, but what does Brian say? That's how I like it. Soon enough, as in Jordan isn't showing yet soon, Uncle Pat throws their wedding reception at his bar. So I guess they're not really on their fucking own, are they? Within 9 months, he has managed to raise the money and open Flanagan's Cocktails and Dreams. We know this because Jordan is pregnant and showing. With twins. He recites a poem from the bar, and everyone lived drunkily ever after. The end. That
Was the most unearned happy ending I think I've seen in a film in quite some time. Not that necessarily his life should fall apart, but like the whole movie's like, hey, how happy it is. Oh, we're having twins? Like, that's not a financial burden. I just opened up a business. Good luck with that, buddy. It was like, like all this shit. And suddenly you're like, hey, it's how great for him. This is very exciting and wonderful. Did he really deserve any of that? No, I don't think he deserves it.
Nope. So that's it for the movie.
All right. Does it still work?
I have to say yes. I hated the movie and it was stupid as fuck, but there's nothing that audiences can't look past in it. And it's a rags to less rags story. Like, I'd love for you to prove me wrong and like change my mind on this, because I don't want this movie to work, but I can't think of a reason why it absolutely doesn't.
Well, the movie, if you take it as some sort of realistic look at bartending now or in the 80s, then yeah, it's doesn't work. It's absurd. But if you take it as just a dumb, fun movie, I can see why people liked it. Does it still work? I'm going to have to agree with you that it does, actually. It's a very white New York, again.
Of course.
And it's a very stupid movie. But if you don't take any of that seriously, I can see why people enjoyed this film. Because it's fucking stupid.
Yeah.
The characters make no sense. They do things that completely contradict their own philosophies. These women, apparently all rich, just waiting for this working class cock they can get. Because rich cock doesn't do it for them for some reason.
Nope.
I mean, the movie is dumb. Dumb with a capital D. But I get it.
Yeah.
I get it. I can see if you just want to mindless, especially again, I will repeat, a lot of people saw this movie when they were in junior high school and in high school, seeing it on HBO or whatever. And for them, it's like, wow, that's what it's like to be an adult going to a bar. Oh my God, they were so disabused of that notion. But I can see the fondness for it. Yeah, I think it still works. It's terrible. It's stupid. But I think it works as a movie.
Alrighty.
All right, let's move on. This was a Patron's Choice episode, and the poll for next month's film is already up on Patreon. Choices are Grease, 1978, Chicago, 2002, and Rent, 2005. That's right, it's May Musical Movie Month. If you want to vote, but are not a patron, you can fix that by becoming one at patreon.com/DTSWpod. Now, George, what's up next?
Next week, we'll be talking about Buck and the Preacher from 1972.
Ooh, we went all the way back to 72.
Yep.
That film, ladies and gentlemen, will have black people in it.
Yes. That will have a lot of black people in it.
In fact, it'll be like they star in it.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess that's it for this episode. I'm Joe Dixon. Thanks for listening.
And I'm George Ermaca. Thanks for listening indeed, because if a podcast drops and there's no one around to hear it, it's just another collection of ones and zeros that doesn't matter.
I am the world's last Barman poet.
Give us a kiss, you sexy beast!
You've been listening to Does This Still Work? Produced by Joe Dixon and George Ermaca. The hosts can be reached via social media, email, or the contact page at dtswpod.com. Be good to yourself and others, because that still works.
Brian tells all about the kissing he and
Who's Carl? That's a different movie.